lucky enough to get allotment in India's much spoken about financial investment linked to real estate, that is REIT, and you're now wondering where your investment is headed, you've tuned into the Property Show at the right time. And if you're one of those who's still wondering what in God's name is a REIT, then I recommend you take a pen and paper and watch industry's foremost voices decode this investment option. Welcome everyone. As India's third REIT, Brookfield made a debut on the stock exchanges this week, and headlines talked about how REITs have finally arrived in the country. We've culled out this special to help you understand real estate investment trusts, that's REITs, and where this might fit into your portfolio. Let's welcome Mike Holland, CEO of Embassy Office Parks. And of course, Mike was responsible for bringing the first REIT and the largest REIT to India. We also have with us Srikanth Subramaniam, CEO of Private Wealth Kotak Investment Advisors Limited. And Srikanth will tell us how have high net worth investors taken to this instrument and should others also be looking at it. Ramesh Nair, industry expert and former CEO of JLL India, also joins us to give us an outlook of what's going to happen with commercial and office space and whether work from home changes the dynamics of the kind of returns you can expect from your REIT. Let's start the discussion. Mike, because you had the honor of bringing in the first REIT, I'm sure you've done this job enough number of times. Can you explain REIT to us in simple terms?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Manisha. Lovely to be here with Ramesh and with Srikanth and, of course, with you. REIT, I'll start right at the beginning. So REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust. So here in India, that's a trust that owns a number of office properties. At the moment, there are only office REITs, but around the world, you can have REITs that are the industrial, they might be hotel REITs, they might be even single-family rented housing REITs. But the thing that they all have in common is that they are generating income, rental income, which passes into the trust from the special purpose vehicles that hold those properties below. And one of the beauties here in India is that we have such a strong, high-quality office rental market because particularly of the international companies and technology companies, domestic and international, that operate here. So that rental flow from those office buildings flows up to the trust, the REIT, and then the REIT is required under regulations to distribute a minimum of 90% of that net distributable income to its unit holders. And so the unit holder, it's not a company, so we refer to them as unit holders, are like shareholders in the company. They're receiving those distributions. Some in a company you call them dividends, but they're receiving those distributions on a regular basis. Again, the regulations require that we distribute once every 6 months. Most of the REITs in the market, I think, are distributing quarterly. We certainly do. And so for the unit holder, they have the benefit of that quarterly income, which would be 6 to 7% currently in the market, plus the appreciation of the underlying assets within that. And the dividend distribution comes to the unit holder in tax-free. So that's another advantage of the REIT structure.
Okay. Srikanth, so am I right in understanding that they're more like a mutual fund than just a single share of a company listed? That's my number one question. And if we are, putting it next to a mutual fund, where do they sit, the current three listed REITs, in the spectrum of equity and debt investments?
So thanks, Manisha, and good to be on the panel with both Mike and Ramesh. I think that would be a fair analogy that what essentially REITs has done is that it would peg the commercial real estate part of investments very close to how we are used to investing into conventional equity and debt through the mutual fund route, though technically, as I think Mike explained, it's not exactly a mutual fund, but I think from an analogy point of view for investors, I think that comes pretty close to it. And as far as positioning is concerned, and we, along with Mike did sort of catch on to this fairly early on, and we continue to be a very big advocate of REITs for investors from a perpetual income point of view. I think where it would sit would somewhere between equity and debt, because it's got the characteristics of both. You as investor would benefit from the appreciating prices of the underlying, as well as the continuous rental income gives for a more predictable nature of income for the investor. So I think from our point of view, we believe that the asset class that it would sit in would be an alternative asset class, and more closer as an alternative to fixed income is where we would expect investors to deploy their investments into.
All right, Shrikant, quality and composition of 3 listed REITs in India. Let me read out some figures before we toss our next question to Ramesh Nair. So I'm looking at it. The first REIT was listed, which was Embassy Office Park, on April 2019. And if I look at the total area of rental real estate assets that Embassy Office Park holds is 42.4 million square feet, out of which 32 is completed and 10 is under construction. Where are all these office assets located? Bengaluru, Mumbai, Noida and Pune. Let's look at the next one which got listed, which is Mindspace REIT, and this came from a very reputed developer of Mumbai, which is K. Raheja. This one listed in 2020 in August, right in the middle of a pandemic, and was oversubscribed quite a bit. Again, here if I look at the total area which the Real Estate Investment Trust holds, it's 29.5 million square feet, so it's lower than Embassy. And completed area is about 23.9 million square feet, 5.6 million square feet is under construction. Where are Mindspace Park assets located? These are office assets, mostly Mumbai, Hyderabad, Pune and Chennai. Finally, Brookfield, which is a foreign institutional holding in India. Where does that one lie? The size is slightly smaller. It got listed on 16th February. And if I look at the assets, total area which were REITed or brought into the trust for 14 million square feet, 10 million is completed and about 3.7 is under construction. Brookfield's assets are in Mumbai, Gurugram, Noida and Kolkata. All right, Ramesh, rate for us the quality and the composition of the 3 listed REITs in India.
Firstly, Manisha, great to be back on your show. Totally agree with what Mike and Shrikant mentioned. There is definitely much more similarities in these REITs rather than differences. Obviously, from a size point of view, Embassy is the largest given the sheer amount of square footage. Mindspace followed by Mindspace and then Brookfield. But in terms of locations, again, you mentioned, if you're looking at the Embassy REIT, a lot of concentration is around Bangalore. If you're looking at the Mindspace REIT, a lot of concentration is around Mumbai and Hyderabad. And if you're looking at the Brookfield REIT, a lot of that is concentrated in NCR and Calcutta. But otherwise, you look at their overall commercial office portfolio in the overall REIT, most of them between 95 to 100% is office leased assets. Your lease expiries again between 6 to 7 years. I'd like to talk more about the similarities in all these 3 REITs, Manisha. The first being all 3 of them have a good, very, very large global sponsor, Blackstone in 2 cases and Brookfield on the other. Fantastic local expertise, management teams who run the show, from Mike Holland to Vinod Rohira to Alok. Can't find better real estate professionals to run or professionals to run this REIT as an instrument.
Right.
It's going to be very difficult to replicate. These parks which you see looks nice, glass, shiny buildings, but to get the land, to get it leased, to get it completed, to finance it, it's going to be very difficult to replicate. And the most important thing here is I think the quality tenants, which all of them have, many of it being large global companies, Fortune 500 companies, global in-house centers of large corporates. So I would say there are a lot more similarities in the three REITs. It's early. It's too early to say, given that field is just like 3 days old.
So Ramesh, if I were to ask you, stick your neck out and say which is the best, ignore that Mike is with us. Would there be a choice for investors? And even if you don't give a name, are there parameters by which they should look at which one to invest in?
I would actually divide money amongst the three of them equally, Manisha, given that from a location point of view, it's spread out in different parts of the country, and all three of them have fantastic sponsors and management teams. I would kind of divide the money equally.
All right. We'll come to the overall office outlook later. So, Mike, what has been the performance of Embassy REIT since listing? It's important for investors to understand what they can expect, because you're the only one who has 22 months of history and performance.
Yeah, so thanks, Manisha, and thanks for those comments, Ramesh. Yeah, our performance, and again, maybe I didn't make it clear earlier. I think one is not just looking at the quarterly distribution that we deliver. It's also, as I said, the underlying asset base and the addition to that addition of value. So it's really a total return proposition. And again, in the same way that Srikant was talking about where are we at on that debt and equity spectrum, you know, there is a hybrid around that. So since listing, we've given a total return of 28%, and that breaks down as 15% in the underlying share price and 13% in the quarterly distributions. So just to put that in numbers, that means that in the last 7 quarters, and I'm including this quarter in these numbers, but we're distributing 3,200 crores to our unit holders. And even through this pandemic over the last year, which has been very challenging for many businesses, we've been able to maintain that quarterly distribution. It's really a priority for us and for many REITs around the world. And so a very resilient, strong business. Again, it comes back to, as Ramesh said, about the quality of the underlying tenant covenant. So for us, 28% total return since listing. I think we're very, very happy and proud of that return to our unit holders.
All right, 28, and like you rightly said, 15% annualized isn't a small number at all. Okay, Ramesh Nair, I'm going to bring you here. We did a discussion and we spoke about how in 2019, look, at the end of it, it all depends on how quickly can they lease out their office space, at what rates can they lease out their office space. Now, if I look at this entire work from home trend, in 2019, we actually hit a peak of net office leasing in India of 46.5 million square feet. We know this number came down dramatically in 2020, but it was an odd year. Let's take a forward look and tell me, what is that number? What is the kind of occupancy can these 3 listed REIT participants expect in their office parks? Will that number be 90%, or do you think it'll be lower?
Oh, thanks, Manisha. 2019, 46 million dropped to 26 million in 2020. This year, the estimate is it would be somewhere between the 26 to 30 million square feet number. See, when we're selling the REIT story, Manisha, the 2 things which we were also selling was the rental growth story and the ability to move your old tenants from a mark-to-market point of view. Now, both those things, there would be definite challenges because we don't see rentals kind of going up this year. It's either going to be stable or in some markets it's going to be dropping marginally. And when you go back to a tenant and say that, see, I'm going to increase your rental, you're paying 50 rupees and now you need to pay 70, there would definitely be resistance. The tenant would say, okay, let me move to a micro market or a building which is lower cost. In terms of your question with regards to work from home, definitely there would be an impact. Around 15 to 20% of office absorption this year would be consumed by work from home. So the demand would go down. But my biggest fear, Manisha, is still the number of people who are coming back to these campuses. and you look at many of these campuses, the number of people still coming to these campuses would be less than like 10-12%. So 88% of your workforce is still not coming back to these campuses. And when people don't turn up to these campuses, then what happens to new demand? Because when a business head sees that his space is lying vacant, why would he go take newer space?
Okay. Let me come to Shrikant. Shrikant, have you built that in? This entire trend of work from home, the fact that there might be very little room to increase or reprice rentals going forward. How are you calculating the returns going forward? Is a number like 7% plus in terms of dividend yield even something that the investor should hope for?
So it's absolutely true what Ramesh said, Manisha, and 2019 and 2020 have been structurally dramatic years, and I think we are going to see that fallout of some of these changes, fallout of the pandemic, not just in the near term, but actually in the mid to long term as well. So I think all of us are cognizant of that. And what at some stage we lead many of our investors to believe as far as investing into REITs is concerned is, I think in India, the fact, and Mike is absolutely right, that some of the initial REITs have done exceptionally well, both in terms of the NAV movement as well as in terms of distribution. But I think investors will be well advised to look at REIT more from a stable distribution over long point of view. I think the initial jump that REITs have seen...
quantify long term for the investor. I don't want it to remain vague. There are lots of investors who have probably not touched REIT. So when you say take a long term view on REIT, do not take a short term view. Next year and the year after could see some tectonic shifts in the way India office market story shapes out. What is that long term?
I think at least 3 years plus. And
right.
in an ideal world,
3
to 5 years.
Have patient capital, isn't it?
That's right. One, have patient capital. Two, I think have a base case which assumes that the current distribution that is being sort of built into the model could be tested by 10 to 15% on the downward side. Add to that the fact that REITs have got benefits of taxation, which some of the other instruments don't. And also look at the fact that from an alternative point of view, interest rates in India are fairly all-time low. So all of that would still not rule out REIT only because there could be structural change happening. But it is important that one does not get excited on the other side and only looks at the NAV movement, that something got IPO'd at 300, went to, let's say, 400 or 480. I think those are trends which can normalize over periods of time. I think many parts of the world, globally, Singapore, Hong Kong, New York, investors invest into REIT not for early short-term tactical gains, but for long distributions, which could even be perpetual in nature. So I think if an investor goes with the right tenets, with the right advice, I think it's still we are talking of REITs, and as you rightly had summarized, Manisha, that each one of them are between 10 to 40 million square feet. So a little bit of vacancy will not have an immediate impact of REITs losing their complete sheen. But I think all the factors and all the variables that I touched upon need to be added before an investor makes the final call.
All right. We've really taken a lot of time, but I think this very important question still needs to be asked. Are REITs for everyone? Because there is a limit. In a REIT IPO, you have to be able to invest minimum 50,000 rupees. And if you're buying on the Bombay Stock Exchange or National Stock Exchange, you need to put in an order of 200 units. How do we broad-base REITs, and is it worth broad-basing? Should SEBI look at it? We'll come back and discuss that. Should you invest in a REIT or a real estate investment trust if you have the financial muscle? That's a topic of discussion today. And the industry experts and wealth experts believe it's definitely time to look at one or all three of India's listed REITs, which have the potential to give you rent, income, and some appreciation on the listed unit price as well. Now, the big question is that SEBI has a limit of putting in a minimum application of 50,000 rupees for a new REIT IPO and 200 units if you choose to buy REIT from a Bombay Stock Exchange or National Stock Exchange. Mike Holland, this was an untested product and therefore SEBI came out with a limit of first 2 lakhs, then reduced it to 50,000. Do you think it's time now, at least looking at the asset quality and the quality of REITs, to broad base this or bring it down?
Yeah, I certainly do. And I think, Manisha, SEBI did an absolutely fantastic job in putting the regs together, very much protecting the interests of retail investors. Now that we're nearly 2 years into post-listing, I think the product is proven. People are beginning to understand it. We've doubled the number of unit holders in our REIT since listing. And so we would hope that, and I believe that it will happen in due course, that lot size will reduce, further broadening the access to the product. I think that will be a good move.
So here's my question. Have you seen an increase in the number of investors? What were you at IPO and where are you now?
Yeah, so we were approximately 4,000 unit holders at the time of the IPO, and that number's now about 9,000. But the vast majority of our investors are overseas institutional players. And that's very interesting because they understand REIT inside out. They've invested in those for many years in many countries. And we were very pleased to see a great level of interest from them, both at IPO and recently when we did a $500 million fundraise.
So what I'm hearing, Mike, is that it's still predominantly, if I look at any REIT today, the investors, the nature of investors is going to be foreign institutional investors. Shrikant, that's not the way it is in a Singapore or a US listed REIT, though I know that even their money comes through maybe institutions. Do you think it's time now? Do you have confidence enough to broad base it? And are HNI investors that you deal with, all of them convinced about REIT or not yet?
So I think at least in the segment that we deal, Manisha, we usually are in the private wealth segment, which essentially starts at $1 million plus. So maybe not exactly, quote unquote, the definition of retail the way we are looking at it. But yes, I think there has been a wholehearted participation in the HNI category that one has seen. And I also agree with Mike that I think given the quality of REITs that we have seen, given the reasonable regulation on REIT, I think it'll be a good idea for us to broad base it further. But I think it's very early days. As we mature into some of these distributions, as some of these NAVs and the market price of REITs normalize and stabilize, it will encourage more retail participation. I think to begin with, I would agree with Mike that the more overwhelming participation currently is from institutional investors, both domestic and foreign, as well as the HNI and UHNI in India. I haven't really seen a lot of retail participation as we would into more mature asset classes, but I think it's really worth exploring for sure.
Worth exploring? Well, maybe SEBI is waiting for the market to get a little bit more mature before it brings it down. But then 200 units, which is about 75,000 rupees, and you can still get into REIT, but you can't own a commercial real estate asset or a grade A office park with that amount of money at all. That's a wrap. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. All about REITs and how they work for your portfolio. I hope you found this show informative and helpful. We will be back with more real estate opportunities next week, same time. Goodbye and thanks so much for watching.